All right, on April 14th, 1999, Danny Schneider and his wife received news that no parent should ever hear. Their son, Danny Jr., had been murdered. In the days and weeks and months that followed, Danny learned of his son's addiction that ultimately led to his untimely death. However, through courage and determination, Danny was not only able to find his son's killer, but he also uncovered a deadly scheme that has perpetuated the opioid epidemic we are still fighting today. Good afternoon, I'm Attorney General Jeff Landry, and I'm joined today by representatives of the Bar, the Police Jury Association, the Louisiana Municipal Association, and the Louisiana Sheriff's Association. And I'm also proud to have Danny Schneider here with us today. You may recognize Danny from the Netflix docu-series, The Pharmacist. With October being Substance Abuse Prevention Month, I'd like to invite Danny to share his story and the work that he's done to honor his son and to help keep opioids off of our streets. Danny?
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it. Again, what's important here is that my story on Netflix, okay, prior to that, I had done a lot of my work and I was so-called an unsung hero. Some people call me a hero now, which I have a little guilt complex out there because there's a lot of people that do what I do and never get a Netflix show. I am excited, though, that it has brought awareness, okay? And what I want to say is there's a scene in there where I taped my wife. I did a lot of taping. A lot of people make fun of that. But it was inadvertent. I don't think there was times I left the recorder on when I wasn't supposed to leave the recorder on. Sometimes I didn't have it on when I was supposed to have it on. And there's a scene in there, if you go through it, where my wife is crying, "Oh my God, why did you take my baby?" And it's a guttural sound that you hear, okay? And the producers asked me when they actually found that tape, and I didn't even know I had that tape of her. They asked me, "Well, we don't have to put that in there." I said, "Yes, you do." Because since my son died, it's debatable, but anywhere from 500,000 to 1 million kids have lost their lives in the opioid epidemic and the opioid addiction. I call it a pandemic, okay? And basically, our story reflects what you didn't see behind the scenes to those 1 million people. So there was 1 million mamas in the background crying just like my wife, "Oh my God, why did you take my baby?" Well, it wasn't God that took our baby, okay? But it was this thing that, and another thing, a lot of people think, why did I get involved in this? My son died buying crack. Okay, that's a giveaway. I think in the movie they're going to try to make it up to where he was an opioid epidemic. They kind of color those things, okay? But he died buying crack, and I had to learn what addiction was about. And then after I learned what addiction was, I found out that stigma was a big deal, and I personally had some myself, okay? But the cops weren't going to solve his murder. So I had to go out and do that, and that's part of the story, okay? It's just, this problem started, though, I was in my drugstore, okay? And basically, after I saw my son's murder, I had intentions to go talk in schools and try to warn parents. My attention was not going to be on trying to shut doctors down and do more investigating, okay? But I had a problem that was right in front of me, and it was almost like as if God placed me there at that time with this high alertness that I had and this care that I had for people that are struggling with addiction, okay? And I saw doctors actually increasing this. I saw Purdue Pharma actually marketing this thing. I had salesmen coming to my store that were saying this thing wasn't addictive. And then I started attending funerals with kids. And these kids reminded me of my son, okay? Most of them were fairly young. My son died at 22. These kids were, 20 years of age to 30 years of age being introduced by doctors to this problem. We now know that has exploded into what we now have named at first the opioid epidemic, and now I'm going to say the stop fentanyl poisoning, because there's a new element in this thing, and opioid and addiction pandemic, okay? It goes along with the COVID pandemic, okay, which gets a ton of attention and a ton of money thrown at it. But we don't get that kind of attention, nor do we get the media attention. We don't get the money thrown at it, okay? And it's a very big problem. And what most people don't understand is, in COVID, and look, I'm 70 years of age, I'm overweight, so I'm a candidate that might not make it if I get COVID, okay? But what people don't understand is most people that die with COVID, okay, they are 55 and older, okay? Very few die under, there are some, there's exceptions, okay? Most of the people who died in the opioid epidemic are like 15 to 54. So we're losing a generation of people that are very young, that have their whole lives in front of them. Many of them have kids, and now we have problems in foster care. So this problem is exponential, okay? And I'm excited to have this opportunity to bring more awareness, okay? I hope everybody watched my show. I also want to try to build a nationwide organization called the Pharmacist People's Association. I used to call it lobby, but lobby is kind of a nasty word, okay? So I call it the Pharmacist People's Association. But we're trying to get a national thing so that we, like Mothers Against Drunk Drivers, or against the NRA that represents gun rights, okay? And whether you agree with them or not, they have real influence. And we can't seem to get the media's attention and enough influence to really, really have a big impact on the problem. So I'm hoping I can build this thing. But while I am building this thing, and that may be a mountain too high, because I want to have 1 million members one day, and then maybe I can press some of these politicians to make them do certain things. You know, if you got that kind of voting block, like the NRA might have, okay? But you know, I'm realistic. Whether I can do that or not, I want to spread the message of awareness while I'm working, okay? I go to schools now and I talk about the issue. And the latest thing is this one pill can kill. And although we are here today, okay, to you might say celebrate, okay, because for one of the very first times, okay, in about 20 years, you know, it's always been the local community and the state and all trying to find the dollars to take care of the problem. And the issue has been that the people that are responsible for the problem never had to put up any money. It was always us having to solve the crap that they stirred up, okay? The pharmaceutical industry escaped, the drug wholesalers escaped that sold it to the pharmacies, and they sell tons of it to one little city or one little town that had a small number of people. They should have known something was going wrong. And I hate to say it, but I'm going to be honest here, okay? There had to be greed involved there. They had to decide to look the other way because they were making money, and that happens way too many times, okay? So we have to fight, but today, again, is a case where we finally have won with Jeff Landry's help and my good friend Walter Leger, who graduated high school with me, and another team of attorneys. I don't know all the names of all the attorneys. They've all worked together to get Louisiana's fair share of a settlement with 3 of the big manufacturers, okay? And we finally going to get some dollars, and they're going to be made to pay for some abatement. And one thing, Jeff and everybody's going to elaborate on some of this stuff, but one thing that I pressed Walter on, and Walter pressed who he could press on, and I think Jeff and them bought into this part of the story is, we don't want this money that has been so hard fought and long time in coming, okay? We don't want it to go for potholes. We want it to go for treatment and recovery and whatever awareness and prevention we can get, okay? And it's my understanding that most, if not all of this money is going to go where it's got to go, okay? Now, we need a lot more, and hopefully this is just the beginning, but I appreciate everybody's efforts, and let's just hope this is the beginning of getting some extra funds, other than out of the taxpayers' pockets, okay, from the people that caused this thing. So I appreciate y'all's attention.
Thank you, Danny. And while I've seen the docuseries, in full disclosure, this is the first time I got to meet Danny, but he could have literally been on our team from the very beginning.
He was.
Because what I'm going to unfold for you is exactly what he's just wrote out. You know, courage is a word that seems to be thrown around a lot lately, but it's difficult to find good examples of courage. You know, courage is speaking the truth and admitting to mistakes. Courage is about doing the right thing when it's hard. Courage is going to the Ninth Ward and leaving no stone unturned until you found justice for your son. And it takes courage to ask the hard questions and conduct months of surveillance and research and to prove that a doctor is no longer practicing medicine and creating addicts for profit. Courage is what it takes to change and to cause change. And so, Danny Schneider, thank you for your courage. You know, addiction does not discriminate between Republicans and Democrats, between rich or poor, between black and white and Hispanic. It is something that has likely impacted everyone in this room and those that are watching right now. And I'm sure that everyone knows someone who has abused, misused, or unfortunately overdosed on drugs. I have, and it's been personal to me as well. As many have also been victimized by the crimes committed that feed the addiction. And when you're battling a monster like addiction, you must attack it from multiple angles using a multi-dimensional approach. It's something that I've said since I became the Attorney General many, many years ago. It takes education, it takes prevention, and it takes treatment, which are just some of the examples. But you must also take a look at the industry that got us here. And that industry for far too long went unchecked and unquestioned about their involvement in the crisis that we find ourselves in. And so that's what we did. And we're here today to discuss the outcome of those efforts. Earlier this year, we announced a multi-million-dollar settlement with a massive consulting firm that helped opioid companies promote their drugs and profit from the epidemic. And as I said then, it was a great start to holding those that were responsible accountable and those who stoked the fire of the opioid crisis. But we, as I said back then, still had much more to do. Recently, this office announced a historic $26 billion agreement with the nation's 3 major pharmaceutical distributors and Johnson & Johnson, which manufactured and marketed opioids. The state of Louisiana now stands to receive over $325 million in that settlement, but only if we can get a critical mass of our local governments, 85% of which were involved in this national litigation, to agree and participate. And that's an important key. It's fundamental to getting this deal done and all of the money brought to Louisiana. And so I'd quickly like to recap again how we got here, because it's not an issue that I've taken lightly. It's an issue that's personal to me as well. You know, from lobbying Congress for more stringent oversight over manufacturers and distributors, to creating a website called endepidemicla.org, which is used as an informational campaign to help educate our citizens here in Louisiana, to making naloxone available to our first responders, a product that has saved thousands of lives as I stand here today here in Louisiana. We've worked with both private and public partners to combat this crisis. We've put drug take-back boxes, one in almost every parish in this state. About 4 years ago, I was fortunate enough to join a bipartisan executive committee of attorney generals tasked with negotiating this settlement. Across the table from us were the giants in the pharmaceutical arena. From the beginning, our objective and my objective was simple. 100% of the funds received needed to go directly to assisting those affected by addiction. I wanted to make sure that these funds did not get diluted in bureaucratic red tape and functions of government. You heard me say before that, you know, when the government gets an influx of cash like this, we have a tendency to do a lot of nothings instead of a few great things. Listen, parks and, as Danny said, potholes are important. But what I wanted was to make sure that this money went to helping abate this crisis. and that meant that these funds were not to be used to subsidize presently available programs. Rather, they would be used as an additional resource. As I mentioned then, Louisiana collectively is set to receive an average of $18 million a year for about the next 18 years. But again, we will not get that full amount unless we have buy-in from all of the political subdivisions in this state. And so today I'm joined by representatives from the various parties involved, and I'm proud to announce that we've come to an agreement. We have representatives behind me here from every level of the political subdivisions in the state, and we all understand that everyone affected by this crisis is our constituent. So working together, we've come up with a timely agreement, because the other key component to that settlement was that we were running on a time crunch. We had to get everyone at the table and agreed within a certain time period, or Louisiana was said to not get 100% of the funds. But because of this, we will now receive the full allotment of funds, and people hurting from addiction will have more and better access to treatment and recovery resources. In terms of funding disbursements, in order to get the resources to the people that needed them the most, we needed a scalpel, not a machete. And we didn't want the bureaucracy of big government to delay boots on the ground treatment and resources to those who needed it the most in the communities that have been the most affected. Which is why today I'm here to let you know and to announce that 100% of these funds are going to go to the political subdivisions, to be dispersed in a manner that will ensure equal benefit to all areas of the state. And people struggling from addiction are the target. And I'd like to mention that they are constituents at all levels of government. All of this money is to be spent treating those in need or supporting those in treatment. And the political subdivisions must spend it in accordance with specific criteria that are outlined in the MOU that we agreed upon. So before taking your questions, I'd like to thank some folks. I'd like to thank those members of the Attorney General Executive Committee, especially Attorney General Tish James from New York, Josh Stein from North Carolina, Ken Paxton from Texas, Herb Slatery from Tennessee, former Attorney General and now Secretary of Health, Xavier Becerra, he was the former Attorney General from California, and many others. They were on a bipartisan settlement committee with me, and through their and my collective efforts, we were able to deliver real results for the citizens of our states. I want to thank all the representatives of the political subdivisions and the lawyers who have worked with us to get this done so quickly. And I'd especially like to recognize my Chief Deputy, Bill Stiles, who has been on this since the very beginning. You know, Bill actually worked in a drug court when he was in the DA's office for some 11 to 14 years. And when these suits began, he came to me and said, I really want to do this. I want to be a part of this. This is something that we can really utilize to help abate this crisis. And so I want to thank him. He has worked tirelessly to do it. It's a great day for him. And of course, he worked with the political subdivisions as well. That's the dirty little secret. He had to hammer it out with these guys. But with that, again, I think today is a great day. I want to thank Danny for coming and sharing his story. This is only part and parcel of getting us into a place where we can contain this crisis. And it's a deadly crisis that, as Danny actually mentioned and so eloquently said, is basically stealing a generation away from this country and Louisiana. And so with that, I'll be happy to take any questions that the media may have.
Mr. Landry, can you explain how exactly this looks, what exactly this looks like on the ground level for the people who are battling addiction, what this money will go to fund? Do we have any idea what exactly that will look like?
Well, again, what we have done is outline through the MOU specific criteria that the political subdivisions can choose to be able to spend that money, and it must be spent in treatment on addicts. And so again, what's going to happen is when, as I see it, once all of the MOUs are finalized and the money starts coming into those political subdivisions based upon a formula that we've utilized, then those political subdivisions will have a debate internally. Because again, I guess the best way I can put it is that when you really want to take care of people, you go to the local governments, right? It's the government closest to the people, and they'll determine how that treatment, how those resources are used for treatment.
I understand maybe we don't have all the details hammered up. Does that look like money going to treatment facilities to help people cover the cost of treatment, basically? I mean, is that one of the things that would look like?
They're inside the criteria. That is somewhat of a component. Again, we didn't use, there's not a huge laundry list of criteria. We tried to narrow it down so that it specifically went towards treating addiction.
So does the state get any of the money, or is it literally all going to local government entities?
Well, last time I checked, local government was the state, but, you know.
Does state government get any money?
No, the money is going to the political
And
subdivisions.
so the formula worked out, is it based on population of the municipalities, or how does the formula work?
It's a great question. What we did was basically utilize the same formula, the same funding model that we used to distribute the money to the states. All right, so in a massive $26 billion settlement, the attorney generals met and we came up with a formula. Population was one component of it. And so what we did was we said, why don't we just take that same formula, and instead of utilizing it for 50 states, we just utilize it for 64 parishes.
Question for Mr. Danny? Question for Mr. Danny?
Sure.
Sure.
You know, this is your story. We've all seen what you've been through. I'm from New Orleans. We all know your story. What does this achievement mean to you?
Repeat that.
What does this mean to you?
What does this mean to me? Well, as I said earlier, it's a day to celebrate. I mean, it's never enough for what I'm shooting for, okay? But it's a start. And I do know a lot of work was put into it, in not only getting the funds, but also in making sure that it's allocated to get to where it's supposed to get. And there are guidelines in there saying, but I think the local governments are going to have some say-so in what actually happens, as long as they meet the criteria, which is basically recovery and treatment and whatever we can do to abate the crisis.
And just to be correct, you said that 18 million over the next 18 years will be distributed to 64 parishes in the state, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
When do the payments start? When does the state start receiving the money?
As soon as we finish getting all the MOUs together. They've worked real hard, I must say.
I'll take that, and it's also dependent on what's going on at the national level, because obviously, I think there's 44 states, I think, that are involved in a bunch of the territories, and so they all have to get their, act together, like we're getting our act together, and we're kind of on the tip of the spear of getting our act together, quite frankly, and so we could be proud of that. Louisiana's going to be one of the first to have our act together, so probably it won't be till next fiscal year before the money starts coming in. But, that's kind of a moving target. But we think in the next 12 months to 12 to 18 months.
So all the states have to have their MOUs worked out with their municipalities before any money starts flowing to any of the states? Or can we start receiving money faster if we've gotten our MOUs together?
I think us having our MOUs together is going to get the money to us faster.
Faster. And I would say, I think that we're hoping that what we did today starts to become a model. I think it's one of the best deals that a state can put together with its political subdivisions. And the lawyers behind me have worked extremely hard in advocating for their clients and trying to make sure that we get the money directly into the hands of those that need it the most.
Given here in EBR, I'll just use, for example, we keep setting the record for overdoses. We're expected to break that record again this year. Is this the game changer that we needed? Is this the thing that we needed to maybe start reversing the tide?
Well, look, I'll tell you that I don't believe that there is a silver bullet in ending or abating this crisis. Again, it takes a multi-dimensional approach. We have to have a law enforcement component in it. We have to have an educational component in it. The treatment is an important part of that. So again, I think all of the things that we're doing, when you think of everything that we've done since the very beginning of my first administration, right? From education, creating educational tools, from trying to clean out medicine cabinets, because 60% of addicts tend to start their addiction with somebody else's prescription. You know, again, it took time, giving naloxone, doing a settlement under which we got product instead of cash. Each one of those was like a brick in building the wall between us and the epidemic. So, but today is a big brick. I mean, you know, we might have laid a whole section of the wall in. You know, it gets us certainly, like Danny said, it's a great first step in getting us there.
And those three giant pharmaceutical companies, by any chance, would you guys know? That one is Purdue, Johnson & Johnson, do you know that?
No, the distributors were McKesson, Cardinal, and Amerisource Burgess,
And Johnson.
And
and Johnson & Johnson.
And they're still pending litigation against Purdue, Mallinckrodt, Teva, Endo, I'm leaving somebody out? Oh, yeah, and pharmacies as well. So they're still, what we've really done here is we've created this formula and this pot. And so now as these settlements come in, Louisiana's gonna be prepared to just take these funds and put them into this pot. And hopefully by within the next 18 months, we'll have all these programs out and rolling. And then we anticipate more dollars just keep coming in as more of these defendants settle. And hopefully we'll start seeing, as General Landry said, this agreement, and really thanks to all the lawyers and the subdivisions who, from the outset, we had one agreement. The first day we met was, hey, this money has got to go to people that are hurting and people that have addiction. And that was the common ground that we found in the negotiations. And we figured out, you know what, these people are a citizen of Baton Rouge, they're a citizen of the city of Baton Rouge, and they're a citizen of the state of Louisiana. And so if the money's going to the individual, who cares who's getting the credit for the money, right? This is about the citizens of Louisiana and putting those resources in those people's hands. And, thank all of you for your hard work on this deal. It's great.
Thank you, Bill.
So the MOU that y'all are announcing, is that with the organizations representing the parishes? I guess I'm trying to figure out, do 64 different parishes have to sign on to this MOU, or do you have cities involved and other municipalities? Like, how many entities have to sign on?
All of them that meet a criteria of, I think it's over 10,000. Population of over 10,000. And the great thing about this agreement, and again, these guys were instrumental in making this a component, these resources are going to every parish, and every citizen in the state of Louisiana is going to have access to these resources based on this formula, whether or not they sued anybody, because again.
Or whether or not they were represented.
Or whether or not they were represented. So in fact, that's the state's portion of this deal, right? And there's going to be people out there that weren't represented, so to speak. They were represented by the state. And so it doesn't matter, because as I just mentioned, they're citizens of the state, they're citizens of East Baton Rouge Parish, and they're citizens of the city of Baton Rouge. Guess what? It doesn't matter who's getting credit for what. What's important is these resources are all going in to treatment and supportive treatment.
So how many entities still have to sign off, or is the commitment today that everybody is in agreement?
Well, what we've done, the reason we made the announcement today is that we have been able to come to and hammer out one MOU that is going to be reflective of all the political subdivisions required will have to sign. And what we have standing behind us today represents 85% of those political subdivisions. And like Bill said, I think the other 15% were not in litigation. And so we basically, as the Attorney General, de facto represent them. But the great news was that these gentlemen behind me were instrumental in recognizing that and saying, look, we recognize that we're going to advocate for our client, but we're going to make sure that everybody in the state of Louisiana gets the benefit.
Question for Dan. What's next for you? What's next for you besides, helping, are you?
Well, number one, we think we have a movie in the works. Okay, the producer was a guy that did Hacksaw Ridge. And, but also, I'm continue to use this platform now, this notoriety that I have, to try to be a voice, to bring awareness and create action and contribute to solutions to the problem. This is a voice I never had before, and again, it's a unique gift that I was given. I worked hard over the years, kind of beat my head against the wall, and never got listened to, and now I have a voice, so you're gonna hear more from me. And so, and I am building this national registry, you might call it, where I really think I can maybe create, politicians pay attention to votes, okay? So if you have a million-man registry, a list of people that care about the issue and they signed in, they can send a lot of emails. They can contact news stations. They can write op-eds, okay? So nobody's put together a huge organization like that. It's a mountain to climb. I'm 71 now, so whether or not I get there before I climb that mountain. But along the way, I want to spread the message and try to save people along the way.
Do you know how many people are going to be directly impacted?
How many people can be?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, look, we know we've got a pretty large, unfortunate problem here in the state of Louisiana. Like Danny said, it's not enough money. We recognize that there actually wasn't enough money if we'd have drained all of those corporations of all of the assets and values that they had. But hopefully it's a step. And I also want to mention, make sure that you understand this as well. When I talk about political subdivisions and I talk about a multidimensional approach, we've got the sheriffs represented here as well today. So there's a law enforcement component. They are a partner with us in helping make sure that we treat those that are addicted. So they're inside of this MOU and are considered a part of the political subdivisions that we came to an agreement with today.